Welcome back to another video as part of the Spark Summer series. This is a STEM-based video, and today we're going to be going over photosynthesis. So, why does photosynthesis matter? Well, photosynthesis is actually done by almost every organism. It's done by protists, bacteria, and largely by plants. And through the process of photosynthesis, we get oxygen. And usually we associate photosynthesis with plants because plants produce the majority of oxygen which we receive as animals. Moreover, medications and different kinds of foods come from plants which use photosynthesis to produce their glucose. And that brings us to our next point. Plants make their own glucose or energy from photosynthesis, whereas we get our glucose and energy from the foods we consume. So we can get our energy through the plants we eat, or through the different types of meats, or water, or anything we consume, whereas plants make it all by themselves, which makes plants autotrophs, and thus we're heterotrophs as animals. So, what is photosynthesis? Well, photosynthesis converts light energy to chemical energy. And if you guys remember from our video on cellular respiration, photosynthesis is pretty much the opposite of cellular respiration. Oops. So the formula is actually flipped. If you can recall the formula for cellular respiration, the products of photosynthesis were the reactants in cellular respiration. So here we go from 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water. We use light energy to convert that into chemical energy in the form of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen. So where does photosynthesis occur? Well, photosynthesis occurs in a chloroplast, and a chloroplast is double membraned, just like a mitochondria. So it has an outer membrane and an inner membrane, and the space between the outer and inner membrane is the intermembrane space. Now, these terms can get a bit confusing, but it's very important to know where each part of photosynthesis occurs. So you should be very familiar with the shape of a chloroplast in the different regions. Now, within an inner membrane is the stroma, which is kind of synonymous to cytosol in mitochondria. And within the inner membrane and like floating or kind of like in a fluid-like area of the stroma, there are granum. Granum are just stacks of thylakoids, and a thylakoid has a thylakoid membrane, a thylakoid inner membrane, which aren't labeled here, and the lumen. So think of a thylakoid as kind of the same as a chloroplast. It has double membranes and it has a fluid-like liquid within, just like the stroma. Moreover, the lamella connects different granums together. So we can see like different lamellas connecting all of this together to form the chloroplast. And the chlorophyll is actually embedded inside the thylakoid. That's what gives a chloroplast its green color, and that's what gives leaves its greenness, because it's not absorbed, it's reflected. So photosynthesis actually has two processes. As a whole, photosynthesis is one entire process, but we can break it up into two processes, or two sub-processes, which are the light reactions and the Calvin cycle. Now, the light reactions are also called the light dependent reactions, and the Calvin cycle can be referred to as the light independent reaction. This is because light reactions occur by taking energy from the sun and using that light energy to convert chemical energy, as we mentioned before. However, in order to get to the chemical energy, we have to go through the Calvin cycle. So we can see how these two steps are related to one another. Now, as I mentioned before when we were going over the shape of a chloroplast, it's very important to know where each step occurs. So the light reactions occur in the thylakoids. Now, a light reaction starts with a molecule of water. It splits that molecule of water and it releases the oxygen it receives from that. It reduces NADP to NADPH, and remember, NADP is an electron carrier. It's similar to NAD plus in cellular respiration. So you can think of it like that. They're both electron carriers, and in light reactions we reduce, which means we add an electron to NADP plus in order to make NADPH, which is now carrying that electron and is very charged. Now, light reactions generate ATP by photophosphorylation, which is similar to phosphorylation or the substrate level phosphorylation in cellular respiration. So we can really see like the overlap between the two processes of photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Now that takes us to the Calvin cycle, which occurs after the light reactions. The Calvin cycle takes place in a stroma, which is the liquid-like fluid within a chloroplast. So we see we're moving from a thylakoid outside, so it's going out the thylakoid membrane into the stroma. It's very important to note where it's occurring and where the electrons are flowing, and it forms sugar, carbon dioxide with ATP and NADPH, which are going to be recycled. Notice the word Calvin cycle, so it's going to be recycled. And it begins with carbon fixation, and carbon fixation actually occurs in leaves, and specifically mesophyll, which adds carbon dioxide into glucose. So here I've included a picture of photosynthesis, the entire process. We can see the light reactions on the left-hand side and the Calvin cycle on the right side. So again, we start with that light, that energy. We're going to start with a molecule of water. We're going to break it down. We're going to get oxygen as our electron carrier. That's going to be released. We're going to reduce NADP plus to NADPH. That goes to the Calvin cycle. The ATP goes to the Calvin cycle. Now again, these are being recycled, so then NADPH is going to get oxidized into NADP plus, ATP is going to break down into ADP plus P, and in Calvin cycle, like I mentioned in the last slide, we go from carbon dioxide, it gets the carbon dioxide, it uses the NADPH and ATP it received from the light reactions to make glucose or sugar. Alright, that is the brief overview of photosynthesis for this video. Keep watching the rest of the episodes of the Spark Summer series. We'll go more in depth with photosynthesis, and we might even dive into a bit of genetics. So stay tuned.